Well, welcome to Prelim Finals Week on the DFS Down Under Show, presented by Draftstars. As I've been saying all year long, Draftstars are Australia's #1 daily fantasy site for your AFL daily fantasy. They say it's the best week of the year. 2 cracking prelim matches on the slate for this particular week. And as always, to break down Friday night's match between the Demons and Cats is my good mate on my right-hand side, the big Hef. How are you, mate? Thanks for joining the show and all our viewers. How are you today, mate?
Thank you, Smatho. I'm well. Looking forward to a big weekend. Footy's almost over, Smatho. Where does it all go?
It is. I've just reflected today. We've done probably 26 of these shows this year. We've got one more, obviously, in 2 weeks' time. We're not on next week, Hef. So your Thursday night's going to open up pretty quick. You'll get a little taste of it. Be thinking, I don't mind this. But
What do you think,
we're nearly at the finish.
What do you think of the week off, Smatho?
Look, I think I don't mind because in the NFL they have the week off, but they have a Pro Bowl game. They have things that you can entertain you. And this time of year, they didn't schedule it. They'll have the Brownlow on Sunday night, which obviously will get a little bit of buzz because it's quite a close count this year. But you probably have to twiddle your thumbs either on NRL or Hef. Right.
I know what's coming, Smatho.
The brand new show, the Draftstars NFL Show. Look at that. So, big. If you're NFL fans, all right, myself and our good mate here at Daily Fantasy Rankings, Tom, who's been absolutely killing it on Daily Fantasy, no matter what sport you're looking at, you see his green little icon there. He's on the leaderboards, right? And NFL is one of his favorite sports. So when I asked him, hey, do you want to get together and talk some NFL draft stars? He just was chomping at the bit. And and with thanks to Draftstars, obviously, this can't happen without their cooperation. So on Sundays, Hef, so if you ever want to dabble in a bit of NFL daily fantasy, which I'm sure you and your mates do, and also all of our viewers as well, Sundays at midday, we'll be doing the Draftstars NFL Show every week. Check it out. We'll be on the same socials, such as Facebook Draftstars, Facebook, Twitter, and obviously on Daily Fantasy Rankings YouTube page. So if you're not a part of that, you subscribe to our YouTube channel or like the videos and things like that. And we'll talk some NFL on Sundays before the big slates. So thanks for the segue there, mate.
I'm very glad you didn't ask me to do that show because I would know one end of a gridiron ball from the other, Smatho. But like you said, that's the first. Adam's pumped. That's the first real look at sole look at the Draftstars contests for NFL. So I'm sure you'll get a few viewers tuning in for that one.
Yep, $40,000 pot on Sunday for week 1, which is the highest prize pool they've ever put out. So wow. I'm excited. I'm excited for the first game tomorrow, which is the Bucks and the who are they playing? Oh, the Cowboys. But it's the Sunday into Sunday night, Monday morning stuff that you want to be doing. So, but enough of that. You're also here to talk AFL Daily Fantasy. Now, let's give a little shout out to last week's winner. Obviously, we did the game between the Cats and the Giants, and it kind of went to script in terms of the actual game was going to happen. The Cats ended up winning by a fair margin, 103 points to 68. But here's Jaysen Mix. He's one of our AFL live finalists. He took out the slate. He was 860, also nabbed a 4th place as well, and a 7th place. So he's actually had a 10K night on this particular one. So hopefully he's a big fan of the show, mate. But he's played essentially a Geelong heavy, but the one I want to look at straight away is obviously Reece Stanley. What has happened there?
Yes, we'll probably touch on Reece Stanley again tonight, obviously going through the Geelong game, but wow. He's a very hard cut to catch, Reece Stanley. Look, he spent up on Mitch Duncan, who didn't come through with the goods, but he was still good enough to get home. So you don't have to be perfect. It might seem sometimes you've got to be perfect to win these big contests. You don't necessarily have to be perfect. When you've got the combo there of Hawkins and Menegola both going with tons at reasonably low ownership, then that's the type of combination you need in these big big contests.
Yeah. Look, even Shane Mumford cracked the ton at 104, but so it doesn't matter what a Rucks are. You literally had to nail your mids. Lockie Ash came through the goods there at 82 at high ownership. It just looks like a solid team. You know, there wasn't exactly like Brad Close there at 59. He didn't really do much, but as you can see, you needed cat forwards because obviously the Giants forwards didn't do much. So Jaysen, congratulations, mate. Well done. There's a lazy 10K and the kitty, then the Draftstars kitty. So obviously we're going to be back here on Friday night for the next match. And let me set it up for you, Hef. So we are doing the Cats and the Demons. Obviously, Demons are the home team over there in Perth. It's a 7:50 p.m. start. The Dees are favourites at $1.50. 11.5 is the line, and the total is 151.5. Now, the weather in Perth, I checked it a little earlier today. They say showers, and the showers are actually forecasted for later in the day towards the evening, so it might sprinkle through the grass there at Optus Stadium. In team news, not much news to go through because we knew about Joel Smith. He did his hamstring at training, so they brought in Hibbard. Jordan was the mini sub last week. You'll probably be the mini sub again this week. As for Geelong, we've lost Parfitt for the year. He's done his hamstring, so he won't be back. Zach Guthrie, who was the mini sub, he's come on to the field, and he actually gets a full game this week. Not much news there. Team news for you to dissect there, Hef, but what are your quick thoughts on terms of the team changes?
Not much there, is there? The interesting thing is replacing Parfitt with Zach Guthrie instead of someone like a Narkle, which suggests that they're going to go a bit sort of thinner through the midfield. So I think it's probably a game we can look at these Cats midfielders with a bit of confidence because it looks like they're going with the A1 list. Mitch Duncan has been sort of floating around in recent times. I think he probably gets a bit of a boost with that team selection, and not that he really needs a bit of a boost, Duncan, but the weather's an interesting one. You're probably going to get into the tools in a second, but I think it might sort of tie in with that a bit.
All right. Let's bring up my tools here from Daily Fantasy Rankings, Australia's number one resource for your AFL Day Fantasy needs. And obviously, I was browsing the site earlier today. The tools are all updated, ready to go, the cheat sheets and that. And here are the notes from what I able to dissect there. So the Cats outscored the Demons by over 100 fantasy points in their encounter in round 23, despite losing late, which is understandable. They're up by 3-4 goals late. You expect to have more possessions there. Max Gawn has gone 132, 139 fantasy points this season against the Cats. So he's absolutely towed up the Cats there. The D's are second in the whole league this year for giving up points to premium midfielders. 3 Cats midfielders went 100 plus along with Menegol's 99 back in round 23. And both teams are still stingy for opposition forwards, both in the bottom 3 in recent and season-long trends. So tell me, is this weather going to obviously tie into those tools? What do you reckon here, Hef, in terms of the narrative you're looking at this match?
Well, the narrative here is that Melbourne play a very contested style of game. So I think if it rains, first of all, I think that probably suits them. We know they're very, very good with around the stoppages with Gawn, Petraka, Oliver. It'd bring Viney into the game a bit more, a bit of a dirty game's more his go. Whereas we do know Geelong like to control the ball and they like to share it around the back half. With wet conditions, you would be a little bit reluctant to sort of go down that path. So any rain, I think, will suit Melbourne. Interesting, we're looking at the tools and that points against. I love that little table down the bottom with the stats that both teams concede. Melbourne concede a little bit above average in contested possessions. I think that's more because of their style. That the games they play, they do have a lot of contested possessions and probably more so than the usual. But both teams do give up a lot of tackles. So that's a interesting stat. That would only be increased by a wet weather game, I would think. So, yeah, I think we'll be looking for a lot of the contested players. In finals footy, Smatho, you know it gets hard. It's those inside midfielders around the contest that seem to come to the fore. So there's a lot of narrative pointing towards the tough inside ball getters.
Yeah. I have to tend to agree to that. Look, we can talk about how the ground's a little bit bigger than Geelong, but it's just going to be pre-Lamb rough and tough stuff here. I don't expect too much of a bruise-free footy, as they say. This is going to be legit. So let's bring up the $100,000 Demon versus Cat slate here on Draftstars. $15 entry, 165 max entries if you want to go the whole shebang. As always, Hef, when we do our previews, we start here with the Rucks, and then we've got 4 options this week. I've already previewed about Max Gawn. He just goes absolutely nuts against anyone, and obviously he's gone nuts against Geelong this year. He's at 15,580. Reece Stanley's won his massive yo-yo year continues, 123 last week against the Giants. He's 11,940. Luke Jackson's there at 8,480 with his new teeth. And Asaba Radigalea, who I was pretty keen on last week, he didn't really do much. So his price sits there at 6,350. So I expect Gawn to get his 100, 110 plus if he doesn't get injured or anything, or God forbid. But I'm very keen on Gawn. I don't really want to know about Stanley's yo-yo form or Jackson or Radigalea, but you are going to say you have to consider the other 3 options, don't you?
Well, yeah, just the theory of trying to win a contest if you can get that result against Max Gawn, who's the obvious pick, pretty well priced. You talk about that game where he carved up Stanley last time. Stanley has competed pretty well with Gawn in past times. One of us on the show did call him an underrated hard man of the competition a couple of years back when he went toe-to-toe with Gawn and beat him down at the Cattery. It was probably you that said that. I can't 100% remember. But it's not like it's always been a total whitewash. And Stanley had 80 against him last time. Like Gawn's the obvious here. If you're trying to go a bit left of centre, the only thing I'll say for Stanley is when he has a good game, he can crack a big ton. As you see there, he's got 3 in his last 5. And if it rains, it sort of does give him his go. Luke Jackson's an interesting one because he's one that people have dabbled in a lot of Luke Jackson as the season's gone on because we have seen him get a number of possessions, more than you'd expect from a young ruckman. So he's obviously a star on the rise, but he does have those absolute lineup killers as well. So it's a leap of faith if you want to go Jackson, but he's the guy that can throw in a 10x. I don't particularly like the matchup against Geelong. I always struggle playing the tall forwards against Geelong, and I think they find it's pretty difficult. If we look back to their last game, Jackson only had 30, so that pours a bit of cold water on it as well. And Radigalea, well, he stung you last week, Smatho. He's very low priced, but yeah, we said last week you might want to go Radigalea if you didn't like the options Stanley and Mumford, and they both scored tons, so it was an absolute disaster if you went for Asaba.
It was an early night.
It was. What are we going to say? We're going to tell people to play Max Gawn, give ourselves a pat on the back, Smatho?
Oh, yes. Yeah. If we've got to get one right, we've got to get it right this week. I tell you that. It's 100K, mate. Can't be mucking around.
Yeah. If you play Max Gawn, you've got to be different somewhere.
Yes.
There's going to be a lot of Max Gawn, especially when we look at the midfielders, because there's a couple of really obvious cheap options, which makes it easier to play Gawn. But we'll get to this.
All right. Well, let's get the backs first. Now, last week we had Tui came back. He was fine, 96 last week. But he was the only significant score for the Cats. Everyone else didn't really do much around those 40, 50 kind of scores. Whilst back in the quali final, Salem, May, Jake Lever, they all scored 80 plus. And they also did that in their round 23 match as well against the Cats. So it's always been a hard matchup to go against Cats defenders, but Melbourne did show that they can score against them. And obviously there are not many premier matchups. There's only 2 here, Salem and Tui at 13K. And the rest kind of just fall away under 10K. So are we looking to pay down this spot or at least get one of Salem or Tui in your lineups or a combination of both?
It's a tricky one. Because we're conditioned now that backs against Geelong, we've been pretty much avoiding them all year. But Salem did ton up last time. May and Lever. Interesting to read in the news that teams have been talking about how May and Lever is the focus, and they don't want to be bombing them down to them. They sort of cleaned them up last time. Geelong. So I think they'll be looking to try and keep them accountable. Didn't work last week. Have we ever backed the truck? Backing the truck. I don't know. Do we go again on Lockie Henderson? Is what I'm trying to say, Smatho.
Oh, do we?
Because look at those two scores.
Oh my
And
goodness!
then look at that 116, and you know who that was against?
Yeah, it was against Melbourne.
It was against Melbourne. Yes, the price comes down. That's the ultimate backing up of truck Henderson.
Sorry,
I reckon you
I'm
can
a
make
bit
a
late.
case of playing two Geelong. I think game style. I think Melbourne are just going to back themselves in, and I don't think it's not their style to chip around the back line, and I don't think they're going to change what's working for them. Whereas Geelong, that is their style. Melbourne, I think they are likely to let them do it a bit, especially if it's wet. They're going to almost tempt them into doing it. So I could definitely see you just running with a couple of Geelongs. Lucky dip between the Hendersons and the Zach Guthrie's, who all of a sudden can just pull one out of nowhere. The Collar Jasneys, and maybe trading down to get your proper midfielders, because you did give us that stat of the big midfielders against Melbourne, and we talk about every week the big midfielder against Geelong. So if you want to cram them in, maybe the cheap Cats options down back, here you go.
I'm actually thinking the other side. I'm thinking cheap
Mm-hmm.
Dees. Now, obviously, they brought in, one I'm going to be selecting today is they brought in Michael Hibberd at 7,450. As you can see, there are some little blips there of 60s, 50s, and there's an 81 there. Sure, we have to look at the matchups, because obviously we've got Hawkins, we've got Cameron, we've got Rowan. They'll all have a matchup with Petty, but Rivers, Lever, and May. They'll all rotate against those guys. So Salem's the obvious quarterback kind of guy without Stewart, so he plays that particular role. I really like him, so he's going in. But he needs to link up with someone. And I think either Hibbert has a role with kind of like the Garen Myers or the closest of the world, or he'll have that kind of semi-link up with Salem. It's a punt. Sure, Jack Bowie there will probably be a little bit more popular at 6,900 for people who want to save money, because no one's going to hit Petty. He's just not there. So if I can back in Hibbert for a 55 plus, I think that opens up my lineup a little bit better than trying to jam in, say, Tui and Salem, or Henderson and Salem, things like that. So Guthrie's there. Guthrie's the only one that's worried. All right. So also we know Guthrie has a good ceiling, and if he can get on some chains with his brother and all of his mates there at Geelong, that will probably sink me. All right. But I'm willing to take that $1,400 and use it elsewhere and get Hibbert in. All right.
Do you think Bowie will be over-owned because you can spot him easily? The big bright red head.
Yeah, well,
do you think that plays into anyone's mind?
I'm sure you'll chuck him in a couple of lineups saying, "Oh yeah, I've got him."
He's been a good story, Bowie, actually, for a guy that sort of come from nowhere to hold his spot in the side. They didn't bring in Jaden Hunt, so he's obviously showing the right things, Bowie. But I'm going with the old pig. So I don't mind it, Smatho. I like there's a bit of thinking behind your lineup, at least, the link up with Salem. If you had to pick one guy in the back line who's going to be the big scorer from the back line, it would definitely be Christian Salem, I think.
Yep. All right, let's move on to mids. I actually want to start right down the bottom first, as you alluded to earlier, because we do have two cheap guys who have been taking their opportunities. Tom Sparrow there at 6,680. He's getting CBAs. He's getting the centre bounce attendances, and Max Holmes there at 6,310. So only moderate price rises from their dirt cheap 5K minimum prices that we are used to seeing. But yeah, look at Holmes there, 63, 74, 62, 65 when he's had a run of it. Extremely popular, I reckon Holmes will be. But then obviously Sparrow at another $300 more. 78, 74, 64. So my question to you is 0, 1, or 2?
I think you got to go with at least 1.
Yeah.
Holmes has gone down in price, I'm pretty sure, which we talked about Duncan maybe getting a little boost because they replaced Parfitt with Zach Guthrie. Now, Holmes, his last 2 games, he's been getting about a third of the centre bounces. So he's got that sort of semi-midfield role already, the midfield/wing. That team change isn't going to hurt him at all. So it's hard not to see Max Holmes getting 60, and in that case, in he goes. Sparrow, I don't think is quite as safe, but you did mention Sparrow. Interesting that in their first final they played, his centre bounces sort of flipped with Harms. But Sparrow had 50-50-50 leading into finals, and then sort of missed out. He went down to 19 in round 23, whereas Harms had 40-odd%, but they flipped for that first final. Harms went down to 16 and Sparrow went up to 43. You see there Sparrow had a 48, and it did hurt Harms' score. He wasn't quite up around that sort of 80-odd mark. He dropped down into the 60s, I think. So I think Holmes is cool. Oh, I will say clearly, I'd clearly go Holmes over Sparrow. I think you can play both. I think you can play Sparrow. Holmes is so hard to get away from here, I think.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because I can easily just click on Holmes and just go with the field and then see if I can. Because if I go Gorn, if I go Holmes, then I'm just playing 7-on-7 with other entrants. All right.
The one thing with your lineup here, Smatho, is you've got 3 demons. Maybe this is the type of lineup that you can get away from Holmes and go with Sparrow and just go for the whitewash. That's something to think about.
I reckon, yeah. I'm like, the more I think of it, I think I get leverage on the field. I'm sure there will players who will play both of them, and that's fine, right? But as I said, if I asked you, I said 0, 1, or 2, and you said 1, I'll go Holmes, then I'll get some leverage on the field at a little ownership for Sparrow. Look, it's if Holmes beats it by 10 points, then so be it. But if they're 50-50, or if I get the 10 points over it, then yeah, I'm getting massive leverage on the field.
Yeah.
All right, let's go up the top though. Let's talk about the big guns then, because now we get some cash. Now, you go. Sorry,
I'm chomping at the bit because I want to say they're both great value options, but the problem is if you play both of them, this is where our main premiums are in the midfield. So arguably you want to get 3 of these guys into your team, and you can't do that if you play Sparrow and Holmes, which is what is really interesting about the slate to me. We know Oliver smashed them last time down Geelong. If there's rain, Geelong give up tackles. Oliver's the man. We talk about Geelong giving up points to the number 1 inside mids. Petraka's a gun. Oliver's the inside. That he's just going to carve him up, you'd think, Oliver. So, and you get the price discount. So he stands out as the number 1 guy on the slate for me, Clayton Oliver. But then we talked about the Demons giving up the points to Geelong, to the big midfielders, and Geelong, they have them. And they're pretty tight now with their rotations too. You've got Guthrie, you got Dangerfield, you got Selwood. I think Selwood's really well priced at 11,900. And on that point, Viney is pretty well priced as well, because this is the game for these 2 guys that they're not the stars, they're not racking it up, but if it's going to be an in-close contest all night, especially with a bit of rain, Selwood and Viney, I think you take one of those guys with 2 of your big guns and then one of your cheap guys. I think that's your structure in a lot of cases in this midfield.
Yeah. I'm going to back in the data and go into Selwood. Simply the fact that if it does rain, yes, it'll come into him. And obviously people look at Viney at $800 more, thinking, that's some great box scores there at 111.92. And he's getting CBAs. I'll get him in. Whereas Selwood's last 2 games there at 68 and 65. It seems that people will jump off at that thinking, well, Geelong are not playing that particular game style, but they are. He's just not benefiting through the fantasy points. So that's through there.
He's coming off different matchups, isn't he? He's coming off Port, who are very hard to score against in the middle of the ground, and he's coming off GWS, who've got a pretty strong midfield as well. Melbourne aren't so worried about giving up points to these midfielders. So, yeah.
No. And that's why I'm going to be clicking on Guthrie and Mitchie Duncan for now.
Oh, you've burnt me on Source Oliver.
So
Right.
I don't think I have enough money.
You've left the door open for me. Oh, there you go.
I don't think I have enough money. Now, obviously, Menegola has been playing pretty well. He's been priced up to 14,120. So, would have preferred him a little bit cheaper than that, but he's there. Dangerfield will probably go in a lot of forward lines if you have gone pretty cheap in your midfield or in your backs still.
Have we got an update on his hand? Sorry, he wasn't happy with someone whacking it.
No.
Because his scores have dropped off Dangerfield, and I think the jury's out on playing Dangerfield. Which it always opens an opportunity. If you can catch him when everyone's against him, we know that's a massive DFS opportunity. But it's just not happening for him.
Any love for Angus Brayshaw or Mark Blickstars at their 10, 9K prices?
Not particularly for me. I know Brayshaw had a ton last week, the week before, did he? Which is out of nowhere. Absolutely out of nowhere. But no, just that role he's got, Brayshaw. He's obviously not in a ball-winning role. I think that's probably an anomaly. I wouldn't have much Brayshaw in my lineups.
Okay. All right, let's move on to forwards. Now, Melbourne forwards outside. Pickett didn't really do much back in round 23. But Neil Bullen, Brown, and Fritsch all went pretty well against who they played, the Lions in the qualifier final. So, what can we take out between these last two performances? Do we look at Geelong's kind of box scores, or do we look at their qualifying final thing and that look, Melbourne are a couple of goal favourites, $1.50 favourites to get in the grand final? You want to be backing these guys in?
I think so. I think you want to be. They're two very good defenses, these two teams. So I think you probably want to be trading down at forwards. Smatho, you got 14 grand left. You definitely want to be trading down. Maybe we should scroll to the bottom. What have we got? What have we got down here? You got something up your sleeve, I reckon.
I was thinking I can't go to Sparko Rowan in combination. I back the truck up on Radically. I'm not sure. I mean, Melbourne's defense is pretty good, so I might have to come back to my midfielder in a second. But let's talk about the forwards before I change my team again. Before we actually go to that, Cindy's asked, any merit going Langdon at Optus, the wings?
Yes, I can see it, but it does sort of go against what Geelong's likely to be giving up. They're pretty hot on cutting down on that uncontested ball. He only had 64 last time they played. Granted, this is a much bigger ground, Optus, than the Cattery, which doesn't suit Langdon at all. I wouldn't turn you away, but he's not at the top of my list, if that makes sense.
Fair enough. I've made a decision, by the way. Joel is out.
Oh.
And he did pump up.
Holmesy.
I'm going down to Holmes.
So the answer is you made it easy now.
All right. So I'm keen on Melbourne forwards. Get me into a couple here for me.
Too obvious to say to go with the highest price guy, Neil Bullen. Can't get out of my head this game that he played against the West Coast over there when it was pretty average conditions, pretty wet, and he had a third term especially, but 8 tackles he had that game. I think if it's a damp conditions, he's a guy who can sort of push up off that sort of half forward role and get around the ball a lot. He's always been a really high ceiling player, Neil Bullen, and 11,000. I think he does have as much as 10x upside there. So I do like Neil Bullen, especially if we're going with this sort of angle that the ground's going to be a bit slippery and the game's going to be a bit contested. I think Neil Bullen can get in and under, and yes, I quite like him at that price. He's probably my favourite of the more expensive forward options, Smatho.
All right, let's look at the other options. Bailey Fritsch there, who's come off a 82 last week. He's at 9,670. Also there, Tom McDonald at 9,500. He's had 2 pretty much stinking games there. Has his role changed, or has he just literally been shut down, Hef?
I think he's just been shut down, personally. Fritsch, I don't quite see the upside with Fritsch against Geelong. I'm always scared playing these forwards against Geelong. He could bob up and kick 3 and 4 and still only get 60 odd. I don't think he's going to accumulate a lot. So I'm probably against Fritsch if I have to choose one way or the other. But I'm against a lot of these sort of forwards as well. We have talked about how easy it is to sprinkle the big forwards. Tomahawk came up trumps last week with a big ton, but they do have their work cut out against the likes of May and Lever, don't they?
Yes, they do. All right, so let's scroll down a little bit. Obviously, now we've got the likes of Myers. Jeremy Cameron there is probably at a nice price there at 9,280, but again, he only scored 46 against, 48 against the Dees last time. Bradley Close there at 8,630. He did actually go through pretty well against, no, he didn't actually play against them. And then we were going down to Gary Rowan at 7.6 and then Osava at 6,350. Any love for these little Geelong forwards that can bob up?
Oh, not particularly. Rowan, if I had to pick one of them, just because every once in a while he goes bang with a big 80 or 90 and he's pretty well priced. I think this is a good spot to randomise your lineups, to be honest, Smatho, with your second forward and end up just picking a guy you don't particularly like and hope that's the one that comes up trumps for you, because there's going to be a lot of pretty similar lineups, I reckon, built. You're going to need to get something a bit under-owned with a bit of a result. So whether that's a Charlie Spargo bobbing up, a Pickett, a Jackson, a Gary Rowan, there's no standout cheaper options to me. I love Neil Bullen. I think Isaac Smith's sort of in the Ed Langdon pot for me as well. Doesn't really suit the game style we're sort of looking to build around, but did have 100 against him last time, and if you can somehow spend that money up forward, I'd probably prefer Smith over Dangerfield even.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to take your advice then. I'm going to click on two guys that you actually didn't really have much love for, Bailey and Tom.
Well, there you go. That's the beauty of this game, Smatho.
Now, I built this team earlier today, and I thought, I've left $1,000 here. Can I actually get up to anyone else? And then you say about Neil Bullen. I can't get to Neil Bullen. So I do really want to come off Duncan and Guthrie. Now, the thing is that what I can do is that I can either get Guthrie or Duncan to Oliver. All right.
I like Duncan to Oliver.
Correct.
And if you do that, Duncan's locked in for 140, like when we potted him a couple of weeks ago.
Correct. So I'm going with the data. I think no, just stick the Geelong ones. They're gonna hopefully rack it up against them, regardless of the result. So, because if I go Oliver, that's quite a large Melbourne stack. So
that could be the way to go, Smatho. They've had a week off. They're ready to roll.
Take those screenshots. Take the screenshots right now.
I think we're seeing a Port versus Melbourne grand final, personally, Smatho. Who are you backing?
Yeah, exactly the same. Port versus Melbourne. The Dogs have been great, but they've brought in Steph Martin. Bont's he's got a massive knee bruise. That's what they say at the moment. He's probably got a little tear somewhere. Good luck to him, but we will be having a Port versus Melbourne grand final in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah. No, I'm more confident in Port than I am in Melbourne. I think Port are almost the bet of the year. There you go.
Now, speaking of grand finals, we'll be back 2 weeks from today for the bumper DFS Down Under Grand Final edition. I'm hooking up some special guests for the show, so it won't be just the two of us, or hopefully it just won't be the two of us. We might get some more experts. I know. That's why I said I'm lining up. I haven't exactly committed yet, so I need to bump up their fee, I guess. So, but do join us for a bumper grand final edition of the DFS Down Under. Always a great time of year to be playing daily fantasy. Hopefully, we're playing for a record pool. Hopefully, we can. Obviously, last year's was it 120? What was last year's pool, Hef? Remember?
Oh, I can't remember what last week's was.
Can't remember. No, okay, fair enough. I think it was 100.
Will you be suiting up for the final episode?
Suited?
Yeah.
Well, I might be able to find my bow tie if you come along. I'll bring my cat spinny back after that. Cool. Fair enough, City. But
Smatho said actually if Geelong wins this week, you wear a Cats beanie on the grand final show.
All right, I'll have to buy one. I haven't got one. All right, we're mucking around here. We'll get going. Thank you for joining for the latest edition. Good luck with your teams on Draftstars this week. And if you need any assistance, hit the dailyfantasyrankings.com.au. Give us a like on wherever you're watching the show. If you're on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, give us a little shout out. Give us a little thumbs up. And rest up, Hef. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Plan to. Thanks, Smatho. Good luck, everyone. See you for the grand final.
See you then. Catch you later.